Hello and welcome to Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. My name is Sam Marvin. I am your co-host. I'm here with my other co-host, Sean. Sean, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm wondering what little anecdote you're going to start the podcast with.
Certainly not one that I've already shared before in a prior episode. That would be ridiculous. If I were to do that, it would probably be because I'm in the middle of a lot of heavy labor right now.
Yeah, I'm good. I've got a cider in my hand. My workday is complete, and that's it. Yeah, just ready to talk about The Witcher, and yeah, that's it. Honestly, I'm just ready to talk about The Witcher. Season 1, second half, great first season. Let's have at it.
Let's have at it. So the way that we do this is we're going to read the plot summary, the episode summary of the final episode, and then kind of use that to trace the various plot lines as they all kind of converge in this final season. Speculate a little bit or talk a little bit about what they were setting up for season 2 and get our overall takeaways as we continue this march toward the premiere of season 3. So the plot summary for episode 8 of The Witcher season 1 on Netflix, titled Much More. Having escaped from Sintra, Geralt defends a merchant from undead monsters, but is wounded and loses consciousness. Yennefer and the mages reinforce the keep of Sodden Hill, aiming to prevent Nilfgaardian forces from invading the remaining northern kingdoms. The Nilfgaardians launch their attack and a battle starts. Tissaia attempts to talk down Fringilla, but Fringilla disables her. Vilgefortz fights Cahir, but loses and is thrown down a hill. When Vilgefortz wakes up, he kills a northern sorcerer, revealing himself to be a turncoat. Nilfgaardian soldiers begin to overrun the fort, but Yennefer channels a massive stream of fire, then seemingly disappears. Ciri is awakened by the woman she stole the horse from earlier and discovers the dead bodies around her. The woman takes her to a farm. Geralt dreams about his mother Vicenna, who abandons him as a child to be made into a witcher, then wakes to find himself on the merchant's cart. When they arrive at the merchant's farm, he hears the woman talk to the man about Ciri. He heads into the forest where Ciri and Geralt finally meet and embrace. She asks Geralt who Yennefer is. That was it. That tied up our season 1. Lots of things happen. Climactic battles and fortuitous encounters. Geralt and Ciri are finally connected, but Yennefer is gone. Lots of people are dead, but the Battle of Sodden Hill, at least the portion of the battle that we saw, concluded. Sean, what did you think of episode 8 of The Witcher season 1 and then the overall season?
So the whole theme of destiny and Ciri and Geralt being tied in terms of destiny kind of culminates with that embrace at the end. We also get, at least in episode 7, the episode before this, I believe is the first episode where all of the timelines have converged and we're finally, everybody's in the same beat. But what I love about episode 7 in particular, the one before this, when Geralt is he's imprisoned and he's trying to get out right before the Nilfgaardian attack. And you realize how tied in all of the episodes were throughout the entire thing. You have Ciri kind of looking up towards the door when she's playing stones with her friends in episode 1. It's a callback to this episode in episode 7 when Geralt was standing in the doorway and then doesn't go to her and he realizes who she is. When I watched it the first time, I was confused by the timelines, but then when I got to this point of the season, episode 6, 7, and 8, like the last third, basically, it dawned on me how well season 1 was put together in terms of how these timelines interact with each other. And I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great episode, or a great 4 episodes. One of my favorite standalone episodes was that Three Jackdaw Dragon episode.
Oh, yeah.
Which I believe is episode 6, called Rare Species.
That's a great episode. We can talk about that one specifically. One thing that you mentioned that I wanted to agree with was the tie-ins that this episode created once all the timelines eventually converge. And you finally realize that during the fall of Sintra, Geralt and Ciri were probably two ships passing in the night, right? She was at first she was kind of being escorted out by a knight, and then he was killed. Then she was escaping from Cahir. Meanwhile, Geralt is also trying to escape from the city as it's falling. And only now in this final episode, after having seen some of this from the very first, do we get those two united. And it's a great callback to something that is said in the very first episode when Geralt is conversing with Renfri. And I think she says this to him as she dies in his arms. The girl in the woods is your destiny. And it's a little confusing. I remember being confused about that line and asking you. And because to me, in my mind, I was like, Renfri's the girl in the woods, like what, blah, blah, blah. And then no.
It's prophetic.
Ciri is the girl in the woods and is his destiny. And I think we also get the scene where this is like the second time that Geralt is connected to Ciri via the law of surprise, right? Doesn't he ask to be paid via the law of surprise from the merchant in recompense for saving him or something along those lines?
Yeah, so it's the second time that the law of surprise ties him to Ciri. And then, yeah, that just proves that destiny isn't a joke in this world, at least, that he kind of scoffs at it the first time, and then destiny rears its head and goes, okay, you're going to use law of surprise again? Here you go. Here she is.
Yep. So the other thing that you mentioned was, in addition to these kind of parallels of coming together, what was the other thing that you're mentioning?
3 jackdaws and the dragons.
Yes. Okay, so that episode is great because yes, that is the kind of rift between Geralt and Yennefer. We have a couple episodes of them coming together, forming this romantic attachment. The episode with the genie and Geralt kind of using his wish to bind he and Yennefer together. In the episode Rare Species is the title of the episode with the gold dragon. Yennefer hears about this and it causes a rift, and then kind of as a falling out, or as a result of that falling out, Geralt breaks up with Jaskier as well and kind of sends him away. And for a minute, you have Geralt kind of back to where he was when we first meet him. A loner. He's alienated himself from the two people ostensibly he has the tightest relationships with. And then it kind of sets the table for him to then forge these connections anew, first with Ciri, and then that sets up in season 2 when he reconnects with Yennefer, having kind of been reminded of her by Ciri in this final episode.
Mm-hmm. Touching more on that episode with 3 jackdaws, I loved the inclusion of him being a gold dragon and how they go through that whole plot of the episode where like they bring up gold dragons and Geralt is talking to one and he's like, they're probably just myth, like made up. If anything, they're like the rarest dragon in the world. And then he ends up meeting one, which is pretty cool. But then there's the whole going against a Witcher psyche of killing monsters. And in this case, he chooses to protect instead of kill them. And then, yeah, it's a very Blade Runner type moment for me where it's like, what is a monster? What is human? Does he have the right to kill these things? And yeah, it's kind of like he's taking a step away from being a Witcher in this phase of his life. And he kind of does once he gets with Ciri, because especially in the books, it becomes much more of a fatherly figure and much less a Witcher. And yeah, if you haven't read the books, you really should go back and read those because they're much better. Well, I wouldn't say much better than season 1. Season 1's pretty great because it follows the books. And next week we'll talk about season 2, which is just a bag of shit. So,
oh God. Well, there's your preview for the season 2 coverage. Having again listened to the books in the series, starting with Blood of Elves, I do want to go back and read the first 2 books. One, they're short stories, so they're probably slightly easier to digest. And 2, I think it is a little bit more of that insight into, the Witcher, the character of Geralt being a Witcher, not necessarily being the hero of this multi-volume story with kind of leading his Hansa across the country in the search for Ciri, which is really what the bulk, the middle part of the book trilogy or the book series is about. There are 5 books, right? Total. Once you move along from the prequel short story collections, there are 5 total books.
Because there's 2 prequel short stories, and then Season of Storms is a prequel novel, but that was released after the 5 books in the series.
So one thing that I wanted to mention just in reading this Wikipedia plot summary is the reveal of Vilgefortz as a villain, or at least as kind of actually opposed to the sorcerers or willing to kill this one sorcerer. It was unclear why Vilgefortz killed the other sorcerer.
Mm-hmm.
Is that ever made? What was the setup for that in the show? I don't recall that really.
In
ever
the
being
show,
explained.
it was a huge plot twist,
right? But there was no reason that he did it, right? The sorcerer's like wounded on the ground, and Vilgefortz just picked up an axe and hit him in the face.
Yeah, it's a cliffhanger because you weren't expecting it. And honestly, there's no in the first season, there's no rationale for it. It just makes you question why he did that, and then it makes you question his allegiance. And then in season 2, you get a little bit more about why he killed the sorcerer, and we can get to that when we get to it. But at least at this point, yeah, it was a huge, huge twist. And again, when I watched season 1, I hadn't read the books yet, and I was very confused. I was like, "What the fuck just happened?"
And now, having read the books, or let me say this: having listened to some of the books, and spoiler alert, I know more about how the total direction of the plot goes. It doesn't make any sense to me why he would be revealed as a villain in the final episode of the first season. From a dramatic standpoint, there are so many other times when that could happen, and then other things that you can do with his character to kind of build that up and then make us care. I remember at that moment being like kind of confused about that altogether. Like, I barely even knew who Vilgefortz was because he was only introduced in the episode prior to that. There had been no mention of him in any of the discussions with Yennefer or Tissaia or Triss up to that point, at least that I could recall at the time when I watched that episode.
I think he was referenced a few times throughout, because he's kind of like he's the head dude of, oh gosh, what's the name of the island? Aretuza.
Yeah, but yeah, and this is one of the changes from the books, right? Aretuza in the books is like there's no men allowed, right?
I mean, yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
It's tough. You got this huge sprawling universe with the tons of books, plus the video game, plus the television show with variances between all of them.
Plus, we've professed that we're not experts in any of this material.
Exactly. So we're kind of a little bit of stumbling around. But I think just the point from the perspective of somebody who at the time had not read the books, had not played the video games, his turn it was unclear why I should really care, because then it's not like he immediately left and became a bad guy. We don't get very many scenes with him doing his evil stuff in other episodes.
Well, I mean, that's like the culminating episode where that happens, though, right? So, like, it's the very end of season 1. Battle of Sodden happens. It's right before Geralt finds Ciri, and then we just see him kill a friendly sorcerer, and then boom, end of season 1.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're right. I don't think it needed to be included in season 1, especially if they didn't really touch on it very much, but I can understand where they're coming from, where they want to leave it on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, he should have been a more integral part of season 1 instead of introducing him in episode 5 or 6 towards the end of the season.
Yeah. Well, you think about season 2, a little bit of a preview of season 2. It ends with a major reveal. Right.
It does.
A major, and we in that case, we meet a character for the first time, but he has been talked about from episode 1, and he's been set up as this very important figure. And then the thing that he reveals in his introduction of his character for the first time on screen is a major thing that has been around since episode 1. And I think in that case, like it hit home because there's all these connections. And like you said, you can't introduce him, spend 3 scenes with him, and then all of a sudden turn him into a villain, which
because there was no shock factor. Like when it happened, I was just like, oh, what the fuck? That was weird. Like I didn't know him as a character. Yeah. He hadn't developed to a point where I was like really taken aback by it. I was just like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah. And then anyway, so there was that. And then knowing Vilgefort's character from the book, it's like, would he actually lose to Cahir in a sword fight? Like, I kind of doubt it. Like, I think Vilgefort's is in the book supposed to be like one of the most powerful people in the world. Would probably not be losing a duel to, a general of Nilfgaard who had no magical capabilities.
And cover your ears if you're not ready for a spoiler.
Book spoiler?
But Cahir and Vilgefortz work together in the books. Cahir is like serving Vilgefortz, basically.
Well, we know who's the boss then. So why were they fighting? Why did Cahir win? Right?
Maybe it's just a show because there were other sorcerers around.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why he killed the one guy. So there's a lot that we could look into in terms of like the Vilgefortz character in fighting Cahir. Yes, he probably should have just burned Cahir alive or something with some spell.
Disintegrated his body.
Yeah, he didn't need to keep manifesting his magical sword over and over again to use up all of his spell slots.
That was so fun. It was like, and then he's like getting the nosebleed. Like,
why he keeps doing the same thing over and over again?
Keep getting the same sword. Yeah. That was kind of, I was like, what is going on with this character? And they were all like by themselves. There were no, like for the general commanding the army, like he had no attendants. He had no bodyguards. It was just the 2 of them on the side of a hill. Anyway,
it's in D&D terms, it's like he kept casting the same first level spell with every one of his spell slots, even like an 8th level, because he's just like bleeding. Yeah. He's like, all right, I'm going to do the same thing over and over again.
Well, I have Meteor Swarm, but by God, I'm going to use my 8th level slot to cast Magic Missile. Yeah.
Spiritual weapon over and over again.
There you go. That's more like it. All right. So other things.
The Djinn episode. Can we talk about the Djinn episode?
Yeah. What do you got on the Djinn episode?
It was just very memorable for me. Like this is the episode where Geralt and Yennefer meet, right?
Yes.
Because she's kind of hanging out at a nobleman's house and is helping men who are impotent, right?
Yeah, with like immediate, like on-demand boner. She's the
via magical smoke. Yeah. Blow some smoke in the nose and then boom, boner.
And then she's also like bewitching people and making them have a huge orgy. Just
have orgies.
Yeah.
But I loved the episode because it was so Jaskier is my favorite character, and Dandelion in the books is amazing too. Mm-hmm. But in the show, and especially in the first season, I thought they did a really good job with him. And episode 5 was the first one where I think his character was able to show effectively. Just him being super annoying in the very beginning. And then they think he's cursed by the Djinn, right? Yeah. And it turns out that it was Geralt who, his wish, he said, I wish you'd shut up or something.
Yeah.
And then he gets like the frog in his throat and he's bleeding. But yeah, just like a sequence of events. It was so good. He gets to the orgy scene and he's like carrying Jaskier through, and his eyes are like lighting up as he's seeing all of these people having sex while he's dying, basically. I just thought in that episode, it was very good. Put a bow on it. Good Jaskier episode.
Yeah, that was the stretch with the Djinn was probably for me like some of the best character moments. Because you got this like magical affliction, but yeah, the relationship between Jaskier and Geralt, and then Geralt and Yennefer was great. And then you had like the orgy scenes, and that's titillating and whatnot, but whatever.
Gratuitous, yeah.
Yeah, it was gratuitous, but I think it helped underline Yennefer's kind of waywardness in a certain extent, right? Because this is from the prior episode. She was serving the king of Aedirn, and then leaves his service following the assassination.
Assassins, yeah.
And it's a little unclear how much time passes by in all that, but she's kind of sitting in this manor home with diverting herself magically, but she's still got this like kind of slow burn desire to regain her ability to have children, right? And that's what her wish is all about. We see it again in the next episode, which is the one with the dragon, where she's there because she thinks there's something magical about a dragon that can help her regain her ability to have children. And that's one of the things that kind of drives a stake in the Yennefer Geralt relationship is Borch. I mean, like, you'll never regain your womb, basically.
But that's one of the cool things that brings them together as well, is that neither of them can have children.
Yeah.
It's his affliction as becoming a witcher, and then her path to become a sorceress kind of does the same thing.
Which, I mean, and this is something that is really more fodder for season 2 conversation about she in the episode with Borch talks about how, I want a child. I've tried to do everything to have a child. You have a child that you won't even parent, right? It was kind of maybe a little slap in his face to remember his tie to Ciri through destiny, a force that he either at that moment does or will come to kind of revere the power of destiny, the lost surprise. And then in season 2, which we'll talk about next week and the week after, we kind of move away from that a little bit, of this almost proto family, like a non-traditional, non-biological family that Yennefer and Geralt and Ciri could have, that we see more in the books. The way that they do it in season 2 is a big change.
Mm-hmm. There was another point, and it had to do, the Doppler.
Oh yeah, totally.
That creepy motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just so. And then when you see him, because he can't touch silver, right? Because he's a monster.
Yep.
And when Ciri pushes the silver coin or something onto his skin, and then he reverts back to his like normal, he kind of looks like an I Am Legend zombie.
Oh yeah, like pale and hairless.
And really creepy. Yeah, veiny, just pretty terrifying. But then I did really like the interactions between like Mousesack and, because doesn't he like? Oh no, it wasn't him. They had like some sorcerer cut a piece of Calanthe's arm skin and eat it, and then they like Fringilla fucking guts him.
Yeah, so that's where I was, because you were mentioning the Doppler. I was like, there are some other very really creepy
dark magic shit.
Yeah, which I think, I don't know for sure, but well, first of all, the Fringilla character in the books and in the shows are completely different, introduced at different points in the timeline. Like, Fringilla is not the court wizard of Nilfgaard. She is Nilfgaardian, but she doesn't have a history with going to school basically with Yennefer and everybody. But yeah, I don't think that's in the book. And it's not just the ripping off of the skin and then the eating of the skin and the gutting of the wizards, but during the Battle of Sodden in the final episode, isn't she like turning mages into fireballs? Like they're sacrificing themselves.
Yeah,
basically?
They're like willingly doing that shit.
Which is,
it's like a fanatical dark magic thing that they got going on.
It's just crazy. And it's just, I get it. It's one thing to be like, I'm going to sacrifice my body so that we can find Ciri, who the Emperor must have. But it's another thing to be like, I'm going to sacrifice my body so that our trebuchet can be slightly more effective. It's like, maybe you could use magic to just, I don't know, make a fireball and launch it at the fucking fort. You don't need to turn into a fireball. Anyway.
I mean, and they kind of give us a explanation for why that doesn't happen with
the prohibition on fire magic and whatnot.
Well, the prohibition on fire magic, and then it basically kills Yennefer, more or less.
Yeah, that
like the amount of effort that she puts into her spell at the end, and then she's unable to cast magic or something in season 2, something like that. Some stupid thing that happens in season 2.
Wow, you're really letting people know your thoughts on season 2.
Dude, like it's going to be me rewatching the first 4 episodes and then just making a list of everything that I hated that they changed from the books. But
Well, I mean, it's almost easier to list the things that they didn't change.
yeah, because there's only like 3 things that like character names.
I did hear a potential explanation, which is that the Blood of Elves is a really hard thing to adapt for television, because it's a lot of setting the stage for the time of contempt, or a time of contempt in the rest of the books in the series.
Okay, but that's still they did a terrible job.
Hey, not everybody can be Benioff and Weiss, all right? Not everybody can adapt a fantasy novel well and then fall on your face when you run out of material. Anyway, what else do you have to say about season 1 of The Witcher?
The last thing I can think of to talk about is when Geralt gets bitten by the ghoul and is going through his like feverish nightmare sequence in his head. He's like coming in and out of consciousness. In the books, Geralt actually sees his mom, and they make it out to be like, was it a dream? And then they kind of really, really heavily lean towards no, he really like encounters his mom. And he turns out that she's a sorceress who somehow is able to have Geralt and then kind of gives him up to the Witchers to become one. But in the show, they really lean towards it being a dream.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if I loved, but that's nitpicking at that point. Just the last little tidbit to bring up that was like a change from the book into the show. But
I mean, the idea of his mom being a sorceress who did not have to give up her fertility is interesting. I think,
or she was a sorceress who did and then found a way to have a child,
or that like that's a really interesting tie. I think the issue is that we don't get anything else with that. We don't get any. It doesn't connect back into anything that we saw earlier in the story in the prior episodes with Geralt. And again, a little bit of, it's not really a spoiler, but we don't return to it in season 2. There's never, even in his kind of struggles with parenting, which we see over the course of season 2, we never, I don't think we get any strong references back to his own relationship with his mother, which would have been interesting. I think that would have been cool parallels or potential parallels with Yennefer and her storyline. And then also just kind of reinforcing that doubt, right? Maybe Yennefer can have a kid. And maybe once Yennefer hears about that, she's going to, change her relationship with Geralt, or maybe pursue a relationship with him. Mm-hmm. But that's not really picked up on.
And I guess just overall thoughts, the first season I really enjoyed. I know we talked in the last episode how the multiple timelines kind of turned people off because it was confusing at first. But I think and normally I'm like, if someone goes, it takes a few episodes to get into, then I'm like, well, then why am I it's a terrible show. If you force someone to watch a few episodes before it gets good, it should be good from the beginning. And this is one of the few instances where I'm like, yeah, I mean, if you give it a couple episodes and you start to pick up on the hints that they're dropping about how all of these are intertwined and they take place at different times. I mean, smarter people probably caught on at some point in episode 1 or 2 that they were dropping names and the storylines were more intertwined than people thought, and they were able to pick up on the time difference. It took me until like episode 4. But if you can get to the point where things are making sense, it was a very good first season. Henry Cavill as Geralt was a phenomenal casting choice. The guy who plays Jaskier is great. Toss a Coin to Your Witcher is an amazing song from a series. Like, that's on my Spotify playlist. I play that pretty frequently. The one thing we haven't really talked about is just music. This show and series has a very particular sound. And the moment one of these songs comes on from the series, I automatically know it's The Witcher. So bravo to whoever they got to do the soundtrack for the show. Cause yeah, it's very like when Lord of the Rings, when a Howard Shore song comes on, I know what it's from. Same thing with this.
Do you know if they use similar music to the video games?
I don't think so. I'm sure I haven't played Wild Hunt in quite a while now because I beat it. It's been a minute and I've moved on to other games. I'm actually, side note, getting back into Destiny 2, which is a great game.
Are you still playing the Gollum video game? I think that's what our viewers really need to know.
Oh, I had to take a break.
I think since we talked about that, I maybe did one Google search, and you know how you get suggested articles. There are just so many articles that are just totally shitting on the Gollum video game. Not a good move.
Yeah,
what was it?
I'm not
Daedalic Studios.
Daedalic or something like that. Yeah, I'm not at the point where I'm asking for my money back because it's kind of on me for not waiting a little longer to see how the game was going to be. But it was Lord of the Rings, so I was like, I have to get it. I have to know if it's good or bad.
You're a completist,
so I can talk about it. And
have you ever played any of those real-time strategy games set in Middle Earth? You know, the War of the Ring type where you get to pick a faction and build a base and build an army.
I don't think so. I've played the other video games like War in the North, Lord of the Rings: The Third Age. That was a good one.
Those are RPGs, right?
Yes, I had those on Xbox. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've only played the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, and the Return of the King on PlayStation 2, and we're taking a tangent. I think we're done with our Witcher.
Yeah, Witcher's over.
We're done with our Witcher coverage. We're now going to reminisce about Lord of the Rings video games that are not Gollum.
I mean, we could have inserted this at the beginning, but we didn't know we were going to talk about it. So
we didn't. And, I the anecdote that I went to, apparently I'd already shared. So here we are. Yeah,
Well, next time you're over, I have all 3 Lord of the Rings games on my PS2. So we can play them.
Little Helm's Deep co-op.
A fun fact about me, when I started playing the Lord of the Rings Fellowship on PlayStation 2, I could never get out of the Shire.
Yeah.
I would always get...
Because the rider is impossible to avoid. Yes.
I would always get caught. And then I hit a point where I was like, fuck this, I'm not playing it anymore. And I don't think I've ever gone back to it. And this has been like 25 years.
I remember making my mom drive me to the video game store so that
someone beat it for you.
No. So I could buy a memory card so that I didn't have to keep starting the game completely over from scratch and playing all of the stupid like fetch missions in the Shire up until that point, because there was no autosave, and if you didn't have a memory card you couldn't save, so you had to it would always just load from the previous menu, and that was it. If you had to beat that in order to get to that
the next
menu.
one.
Yeah. And I remember it was something as simple as just run on the grass, right, to get around the rider. Now don't go pick up the Fellowship of the Ring.
Well, it's so hard because it's fucking dark.
It's super dark.
And you can't see where you're going.
That game is one of the worst designs ever. From just the way that the camera would just it's, I don't know what the term is. It's not cinematography, but the lighting, the camera angle, terrible for figuring out where you are in the universe and then actually seeing the stuff on screen. There's a conflict with the Nazgul at the very end of the game where you can't even see what you're shooting at. You're supposed to be Legolas or Aragorn shooting with the bow and arrow. You can't even see the Nazgul on screen in order to do the final boss fight. Terrible game. That game was made by Vivendi, whereas the Two Towers and the Return of the King games were made by EA, and Vivendi got the rights to adaptations of the book, and EA got rights to adaptations of the movies. And so the EA games, they have the,
cinematics from
exactly.
The movies,
it's that's actually Orlando Bloom. Vigo and Ian McKellen are actually voicing their characters. They look like the characters from the movies. Where the books, the Vivendi game, the Fellowship of the Ring game, is just a chapter by chapter adaptation of the novel.
Yeah.
And it's just done on a super cheap budget, terrible game. But you should totally go back and play it for this podcast.
Well, now that I'm 30, maybe I'll actually be able to beat the fucking game.
Do you have a memory card? That's the important
Yes,
thing.
I do.
Okay.
Which, the other really funny thing about that, those memory cards are only like 5 megabytes.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
Or 10 megabytes. It's something really ungodly small. And then now you look at games that you download on your Xbox, like 120 gigs for the game. And yeah. One more piece of video game news, since we're on a tangent anyway. I posted this on our Facebook, Elves Brings Nerdy Things Facebook page. Star Wars is coming out with an open world RPG. The first ever Star Wars open world RPG. It's called Star Wars Outlaw.
Is like a single player open world?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Because I was thinking they had, from an MMO standpoint, they had Galaxies and Knights of the Old Republic, or Old Republic MMO, neither of which I've played.
Yeah.
But okay, that'd be interesting.
Yeah. So this comes out, I think, 2024 sometime. But yeah, really excited about that. And eventually we might get a new Elder Scrolls game, which I've been waiting for since 2012, 11, I think 2011.
When Skyrim came out?
I was a sophomore in college.
Skyrim, great game. You haven't played any of the Elder Scrolls Online, have you?
Dude, I hate
MMOs.
MMOs, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I tried to play the Elder Scrolls Online, and the gameplay is so different from Oblivion and Skyrim that I can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, those are like the ultimate RPGs, right? Just especially Skyrim, just open world RPG, get into anything, just anywhere on the map, you can do it. You can go there, kill the people, kill the bandits, whatever. Yeah. It's, I don't know. I will admit this because it's many years since, but I illegally played World of Warcraft vanilla on like a bootleg server back in 2015.
You are confessing.
I know. Well, come at me, Blizzard, whatever.
Or the feds.
It's not, I don't think it's a crime.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see. I don't think they're listening to this podcast either.
I don't think ignorance.
What's the statute of limitations on video game playing, whatever?
I don't think ignorance is a excuse for breaking the law.
Anyway, I knew what I was doing was not 100% kosher, but this will be my last podcast made from the outside. The next podcast will be recorded at a minimum security federal prison.
If we're forced to change the name of the podcast in the coming weeks, you'll know why.
Yeah. No, but it's like playing an MMO takes so much time because it's very reliant on other people in order to have enjoyable gameplay. Like, it's possible to go in and just do a solo thing where you're wandering around the universe or the world and, killing monsters and whatnot, but all of the really fun, good content pretty much requires that you have a party. And that means you've got to put the time in to either join a guild or, get people that you're going to play with. And then if you are casual in how you want to engage with it, all the people that you played with, a week ago are now 8 levels ahead of you, and you've got to do it all over again. So
that's why Destiny 2 to me is the perfect balance between MMO and RPG. Because have you ever played Destiny 2?
No, I have not.
So it's very open world. You can run around and explore the game. You can play the campaign by yourself. But if you're doing the actual campaign missions, you can have 2 other people join you. So a couple of years ago, when I was playing with a bunch of my friends, our clan was the janitorial squad.
Nice.
And if someone was like really behind on the campaigns, you could have 2 other people play with them and catch them up very quickly, because they would be at a much higher level than you. And the big boss at the end of one of your missions would take you maybe 10 minutes to beat. And their guns are so much more advanced than yours that they kill it in like 60 seconds. So it's just, to me, it's way better. there's raids and strikes and all of these different special missions that you can go on, and you play with your friends. So, but it's still doable by yourself.
And what's that? What platform is that on?
I played on the Series X.
Okay. Well, all I have is the little Switch. So I'm going to stick with my
it's going to take
out
you,
the Hyrule Compendium.
But I'm almost positive that Destiny 2 is cross-platform. So I'm pretty sure you can play with like PS5, PC, as well as Xbox people.
Well, the Switch is probably the last video game console that I will have.
I doubt it.
We'll see.
I'm a dirty little boy for Microsoft, so whatever consoles they put out, I'm sure I'll be forking money over.
They get you.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll end that with me being a dirty little boy.
There we go. Sean's a dirty little boy. See what happens next week when we continue our Witcher conversation, the Witcher television series or Netflix series. We'll cover the first half of season 2 next week in our run-up for season 3, which premieres June 29th, just around the corner.
May Orcus watch over you. You can follow us on Elves, Rings, Nerdy Things on our Facebook page. You can email us at elvesringsnerdythings@gmail.com. We're on Spotify and pretty much every other platform you can listen to podcasts. And I think that's everything.
That's everything.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.